Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into apigenin. It's this really interesting natural compound, and it seems to be linked to, well, how we age.
Right. And you probably come across it more than you think. It's in stuff like parsley, chamomile tea, celery, fairly common things.
Exactly. So if you're looking to get up to speed quickly on health, longevity, aging, this is for you. Our mission today. Really unpack the science on apigenin.
Specifically, how it deals with our cells as they get older. These senescent cells.
And we want to clarify the difference between compounds that say calm these cells down versus ones that actually get rid of them. Senomorphics versus senolytics.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay, so maybe first things first. To understand apigenin, we need to talk about these senescent cells. What exactly are they?
Okay, so picture this. As your body ages, some cells kind of stop dividing properly. They get old, a bit worn out. They don't die, but they don't really work right either.
They just hang around.
They hang around, and worse, they start pumping out these inflammatory signals. We call this the SASP, the senescence-associated secretory phenotype. Think of them as grumpy old cells making trouble for their neighbors.
Okay, grumpy old cells. I like that. And this troublemaking, this inflammation, that's linked to aging itself.
Absolutely. It's a major driver of age-related decline and many diseases we associate with getting older. That's why finding ways to deal with these cells is such a hot area of research.
Right. Which brings us to those two terms, senomorphics and senolytics. You hear them a lot. How do they tackle these grumpy cells differently?
Okay, so senolytics, think lysis, meaning destruction. Senolytics are designed to kill and eliminate senescent cells.
Like a cleanup crew. They find the grumpy cells and get rid of them.
Pretty much. They trigger apoptosis, or cell self-destruction, specifically in those senescent cells, reducing the overall burden.
Okay, clear enough. So what about senomorphics then?
Senomorphics take a different approach. Morpho relates to form or behavior. They don't aim to kill the cells.
So they don't remove them.
No, instead, they focus on changing their behavior.
Yeah.
They try to suppress that harmful SASP, those inflammatory signals we talked about.
Ah, so they're trying to make the grumpy cells less grumpy, stop them from causing trouble.
Exactly. Calm them down, make them better neighbors. The cells are still there, but they're not spewing out as much damaging stuff.
Got it. Okay, so one's removal, one's behavioral change. Now, the big question, apigenin, where does it fit? Is it a remover or a calmer?
Well, based on the scientific evidence we have, looking at research up to, say, early 2025, the strong consensus is that apigenin acts as a senomorphic.
A calmer, then. What's the evidence look like?
Early lab studies, in vitro studies, showed this quite clearly. They looked at fibroblasts, connective tissue cells that were made senescent.
Okay.
And when they treated these cells with apigenin, they saw a significant drop in the levels of key inflammatory SAP factors, things like IL-6, IL-8. These are well-known inflammation markers.
And did they figure out how apigenin was doing this?
Yeah, they started mapping it out. It seems to interfere with some of the internal signaling pathways that control the production of these SAP factors, like the NF-GUB pathway, which is a major inflammation regulator.
So it's getting inside the cell and, like, turning down the inflammation bile?
Precisely. And what's quite interesting is that newer research found another target, a protein called peroxyredoxin 6, or PRDX6.
Another way it works.
Seems like it. Targeting PRDX6 is another mechanism apigenin uses to suppress that SAP. So it's not just hitting one thing, it looked like a multi-pronged approach to quieting these cells down.
Multi-pronged quieting. I like that. But the key takeaway from these studies is less inflammation, but the cells themselves didn't die off.
That's the crucial point. They saw this reduction in the harmful secretions, but not significant cell death, not apoptosis. That really cements its classification as senomorphic.
Makes sense. So current evidence doesn't really back it up as a potent cell killer, a senolytic.
Not in most models studied, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem very effective at inducing that self-destruct sequence or really clearing out senescent cells.
Okay, so let's talk specifics. Where have we seen these calming effects in action? You mentioned a 2024 study on bone marrow stem cells.
Yes, human bone marrow stromal stem cells, or HBMSCs. These are really important cells.
Why focus on those particular cells in the context of aging?
Well, these stem cells are crucial for maintaining our bones, for repair and regeneration. As we age, these cells can become senescent too, and they don't work as well. This contributes to things like osteoporosis, weaker bones.
Right, something many people worry about. What did that study find with apigenin?
They found that treating these aging HBMSCs with apigenin reduced markers of senescence. So things like beta-galactosidase staining, a common visual marker for senescent cells, went down. The cells basically showed fewer signs of being old and grumpy.
Okay, fewer grumpy stem cells. Did that translate into better function? Any sort of real-world benefit?
It did. Importantly, the Apigenin-treated cells were better at differentiating, turning into actual bone-forming cells. And they even saw improved bone formation in vivo, meaning in a living organism model.
Wow, okay, so it's not just looking better in a dish, it's actually helping build bone. That's quite tangible.
It is. Now, they did note that some specific molecular markers inside the cells, like P53 or P16, didn't always show uniform changes, but the overall picture was clear. Less senescence burden, better bone-related function.
That's really interesting, supporting bone health, potentially. Anything else from that study?
Yeah, they also observed positive effects on mitochondria, the cell's energy factories. They seemed to function better, and there was less oxidative stress in the cells treated with apigenin.
Ah, so linking back to its antioxidant properties, too.
Exactly. It suggests apigenin might be helping these cells be more resilient overall, not just by reducing their inflammatory output, but by improving their basic housekeeping, you could say.
Okay, so potential benefits for bone health. What about the brain? That's always top of mind when we talk aging.
Definitely. And there's another relevant study, also from around early 2024, this time in aged mice. They looked directly at cognitive aging.
And what happened when they gave these older mice Apigenin?
The results were quite striking. The mice that received apigenin performed better on tests of learning and memory compared to the control group.
Better brain function in older mice. That's significant. Did they look deeper, try to see why?
They did. They performed transcriptomic analysis, basically looking at which genes were active in the brain tissue.
Okay, what did that show?
It revealed that apigenin treatment was associated with reduced expression of inflammation-related genes, and, interestingly, an increase in the expression of genes linked to healthy neuronal function, like communication between brain cells.
So, less inflammation, better nerve cell activity. It sounds like it's creating a healthier environment in the aging brain.
That seems to be the implication, and they back this up with some cell culture work, too.
What kind?
They look at astrocytes. These are important support cells in the brain. They help neurons function correctly.
Right.
In lab experiments, apigenin reduced SASP components and other senescence markers in these astrocytes. This suggests a direct effect on brain cell aging, helping to quell that inflammation right at the source.
Okay, so we're seeing benefits in bone stem cells, potentially protecting the brain. Does it go broader than that? Any hints of system-wide effects on aging?
Well, it gets even more interesting. A study published around 2025 looked at simpler organisms, yeast and Drosophila, which are fruit flies, common models in aging research.
What did they find with apigenin in flies and yeast?
They found that apigenin increased their resistance to oxidative stress, that cellular damage we mentioned, and actually extended their lifespan.
Extended lifespan, wow. Even in simple organisms, that's a big finding. Did they propose how it might be working?
Yes, the researchers suggested it involves modulating a pathway called the PTN-AKT pathway. This is a really fundamental pathway involved in cell growth, metabolism, survival, basic cellular processes.
So affecting something that fundamental could explain a lifespan effect.
It could. The fact that apigenin seems to influence this core pathway hints that its benefits might be quite broad, potentially impacting aging across different systems, not just in specific tissues like bone or brain.
This is building a strong case for apigenin as a senomorphic, a cell calmer. But let's just circle back and be absolutely clear. It's not primarily acting as a senolytic, right? Not a cell killer.
Correct. That's a really critical distinction to keep making. Based on the bulk of targeted research we have up to now, apigenin doesn't show significant senolytic activity. It doesn't appear to be efficient at inducing apoptosis in senescent cells or substantially clearing them out in most tested scenarios.
So you might hear speculation about various natural compounds, maybe polyphenols in general, having senolytic effects under certain lab conditions.
Right, there's broad research happening. But when you look at the studies specifically focused on apigenin and its effects on senescence markers and cell viability,
the consistent story is senomorphic action. Managing the bad behavior, not eliminating the cells themselves.
Precisely. It's about modulating the SSP, improving function, reducing the negative impact of these cells being there.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up for everyone listening. The main takeaway here is that apigenin, found in foods you might eat regularly,
Like parsley, celery, chamomile.
looks like a very promising senomorphic. It's not primarily a senolytic clearing out old cells. Instead, it seems to work by making those older senescent cells less harmful.
Exactly. It dials down their inflammatory secretions, that damaging ASP, And as we saw in some studies, it might even help improve the function of certain cells, like those bone marrow stem cells.
So we've touched on potential benefits related to inflammation, bone health, cognitive function in mice, and even lifespan extension in simpler models.
Yeah, a pretty interesting range of effects pointing towards healthier aging.
And it highlights that even if a compound doesn't kill senescent cells, managing their negative impact could still be really significant. Quieting them down might be a powerful strategy in itself.
Absolutely. Targeting the SAP and boosting cellular resilience, like Apigenin seems to do,
Yeah.
is a very valid approach to mitigating age-related decline.
So, thinking about how easy it is to get apigenin through diet and seeing these kinds of results in studies, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What role could natural compounds like this play down the line in strategies for staying healthy longer?
It definitely poses some provocative questions. And crucially, what's the next step for research? Especially, more robust human studies to really see how these promising lab and animal findings translate to us.
Definitely food for thought, something for all of us to consider. Thanks for digging into this with us today.